1 minute until showtime.
Live from Daytona Beach, Florida, bringing a voice to America, speaking the truth, and making America great again 1 hour at a time. It's Trump Talk Now. Trump Talk Now from the Double Barrel Bar and Grill at Volusia Top Gun. Here's your host, Vic Baker.
Greetings, fellow American patriot Trumppublicans, and welcome to Trump Talk Now, the home of fearless truth-telling about America's transformational president, Donald J. Trump, and his ongoing mission to make America great again. Our show is brought to you locally by Volusia Top Gun in Daytona Beach, Florida, where we're live streaming on Facebook in front of an audience of patriot Trumppublicans. In just a few minutes, we will welcome Carter Page, the man at the center of one of the worst scandals in our country's history. In his new book, Abuse and Power, Carter Page reveals how our nation's top law enforcement officials abused their power and framed an innocent American citizen in their effort to take down Donald Trump. Page's gripping account, which shows that the rot goes deeper than anyone realized, names the men and women who tried to pull off a coup and didn't care who got hurt. Now let's talk about that Woodward hit job on President Trump. I personally don't see anything wrong with the president trying to avoid public panic over what has become a panic-demic. President Trump's big mistake was not in telling muckraker Bob Woodward that he wanted to downplay the potential threat of the Wuhan virus in order to avoid a public panic. That's what presidents do. Does anyone remember the words of FDR? We have nothing to fear but fear itself. Those are pretty dark times, and yet he still tried to calm the American public. The president's mistake was that he talked to Bob Woodward at all. He sat down with Woodward 18 times months ago. Yet Woodward has released this clip less than 2 months before the election. Let's take a look at the actions of the Trump administration in the early days of this outbreak. December 31st, China reports the discovery of the coronavirus to the World Health Organization. January 3rd, CDC Director Robert Redfield formally offers to send U.S. experts to China to investigate the coronavirus. January 6th, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issue a Level 1 travel notice for Wuhan, China. January 7th, the CDC establishes a coronavirus incident management team. January 17th, the CDC begins implementing public health entry screening at 3 U.S. airports that receive the most travelers from Wuhan, China. Those are San Francisco, New York's JFK, and Los Angeles. January 20th, Dr. Fauci announces the National Institutes of Health is already working on the development of a vaccine for the coronavirus. January 21st, the CDC activates its Emergency Operations Center for Coronavirus Response. January 23rd, the CDC seeks special emergency authorization from the FDA to allow states to use its newly developed coronavirus test. January 27th, the CDC issues a Level 3 travel health notice urging Americans to avoid all non-essential travel to any part of China. The White House Coronavirus Task Force starts meeting to help monitor and contain the spread of the virus and provide updates directly to the president. January 31st, the Trump administration declares the coronavirus a public health emergency, announces Chinese travel restrictions, suspends entry into the United States for foreign nationals who pose a risk of transmitting coronavirus. The Department of Homeland Security takes critical steps to funnel all flights from China into just 7 domestic U.S. airports. During this same time frame, prominent Democrats, including New York's killer Governor Andrew Cuomo, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and former Vice President Joe Biden, downplay the risk of the Wuhan virus. Cuomo and Biden say it's no time to panic. Nancy Pelosi encourages Americans to visit Chinatown. When you actually hear what President Trump said to Bob Woodward, it makes perfect sense. But the words give Democrats new ammunition to skew the truth. The truth is that President Trump and his administration were on top of this from the beginning. You just heard the timeline. Even Dr. Anthony Fauci says President Trump took the Wuhan virus threat seriously from the very start. The truth is that President Trump launched the largest national mobilization since World War II to combat the spread of the Wuhan virus. The truth is that we are nearing the end of this pandemic. The truth is that Democrats have weaponized COVID to take down Trump. The truth is that thousands of Americans died, but 94% were suffering from other complications along with the Wuhan virus. The truth is that we are now less than 8 weeks away from a fiercely contested election. We've witnessed hit job after hit job after hit job. Last week, it was a scurrilous smear by the Atlantic Monthly, citing 4 anonymous sources who claimed the president called fallen soldiers losers and wounded Marines suckers. Nearly 24 top Trump administration staffers who were there in France at the time of the alleged comments went on the record in refuting those outrageous claims. The truth is, President Trump has strongly supported the men and women who put their lives on the line serving our military. He's the first president in decades to keep us out of a new war. President Trump has been taking our military forces out of harm's way wherever possible. The military-industrial complex does not like that because it's not good for their business. President Eisenhower, no stranger to the military, warned us decades ago about the insidious influence of those sinister warmongers. Yet this president has reformed the VA to give veterans the quality health care they deserve. He's given raises to military rank and file. He's built up our military arsenal to ensure that we have the strongest defense on the planet. While some of the neocons and military top brass may not like President Trump's new outlook and hard, common sense approach to our military defense, the rank and file know he has their backs. Speaking of hit jobs, do you remember Colonel Alexander Vindman, the impeachment witness? Byron York has a new book out pointing to Vindman as the real whistleblower in the Ukraine probe case. It was Vindman who listened in on the president's call to the new president of Ukraine. It was Vindman who objected to the content of the call. Vindman no longer works for the White House or the Pentagon. Good riddance. The streets of Democrat-run ruined cities are still out of control. After 7 days of rioting, the police chief and top police command staff of Rochester, New York, resigned this week. The mob is going after black police officers who actually enforce the law. The Rochester police chief is, as it happens, is black. The Dallas police chief, also black, has resigned. The Seattle police chief, also black, has resigned after the defunding of her department. Attorney General William Barr says the surge of FBI agents in Operation Legend has curbed the Chicago murder rate by 30% in recent weeks. President Trump stands ready to help bring peace back to the streets of urban America. I can't wait for the election. Joe Biden has crawled out of his basement and he suddenly discovered that riots are now a bad thing. Nice going, Slow Joe. You must have some people who've been reading the polls. At the same time, Joe has flip-flopped on a national mask mandate after somebody pointed out that it would be unconstitutional. He's flip-flopped on his threat to impose a fracking ban after somebody pointed out that it will cost thousands of jobs and votes in places like Pennsylvania. And after saying he would defund police, Slow Joe now claims it was Trump who said that. Really, Joe? Really? Joe is getting his pre-written softball questions from a compliant press corps, and he's trying to read his pre-scripted answers from a teleprompter, but without much success. He can't even read a teleprompter. This would be funny if it weren't so pathetic, that they're putting him up for president of the United States and expecting people to actually think he can do the job. Joe held a Labor Day event with 4 labor leaders on a dried-out Lancaster, Pennsylvania backyard. They were all outside wearing masks. What's that about? At the same time, President Trump held a Winston-Salem, North Carolina airport rally attended by 10,000 fans who chanted, "We love you." Now, 2 more items certain to light Democrat heads on fire. First, President Trump has released a list of potential Supreme Court nominees for his second term. That list includes Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Tom Cotton, and Senator Josh Hawley, 3 brilliant conservative constitutional warriors. Last but not least, a Norwegian lawmaker has nominated President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, citing his work to broker a peace treaty between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. Donald Trump has brought the art of the deal to the Mideast, and he may actually find a solution that has eluded every president before him. So let me be very blunt. The mediocrat left will throw every mudball they can muster at President Trump between now and November 3rd. They will try to muddy the results by clogging the system with late-arriving mail ballots. They'll invent and hurl out a scandal a day in a desperate ploy to peel away Trump's support. That's why it's all that more important for you to volunteer for your local Trump Victory headquarters, to knock doors and make phone calls for our transformational president. This is not a battle between Republican and Democrat, left or right so much. It's a battle between greatness or evil, between common sense capitalism or Marxism, between our cherished values of the American Constitution or mob rule by the forces of anarchy, chaos, and mayhem. They will try to tamper with your mandate. They cannot tamper. You've got 8 weeks to make it happen. Time is of the essence. Now on to my fellow Trump pundit, Volusia County's 2016 Trump-Pence campaign chairman, Joe Fieldus. Joe.
Good evening, Vic. Hello, friends. As I've said on this show before, I believe the ongoing riots are organized by America's enemies, both foreign and domestic. The foreign enemy is the Communist Chinese Party, the CCP, which after infecting us with its virus, is financing and instigating our election year chaos. Their goal is to end the Trump presidency. Donald Trump is fully aware of the CCP's mugging of America over the last quarter century by way of one-sided trade deals that sent American jobs overseas and transferred millions of our dollars to the CCP. China flourished and middle America declined. But, and this is a big but, much of our political class prospered. The establishment political elites partnered with our omnipresent state media, social media movers and shakers, using the hidden powers of an unelected deep state bureaucracy, are, taken in combination, the drivers of what author Lee Smith calls the permanent coup against our president. President Trump's America First trade policies have ended the lopsided deals of the past, and China's leaders are in a panic. They have grown accustomed to and dependent on American politicians' acquiescence to the rise of China, a quid pro quo arrangement that dissolved after the 2016 election. During the 2016 campaign, Trump promised to confront China about its unfair economic practices. The president's approach during his first term is unprecedented in its toughness. Trump implemented an all-of-government national security approach to counter China's infiltration of the United States, a large-scale effort not seen by previous U.S. administrations. Trump has sanctioned Chinese officials on multiple occasions, including for supporting China's new authoritarian national security law in Hong Kong. FBI Director Christopher Wray recently revealed that the Bureau currently has more than 2,000 active investigations that trace back to the CCP, marking a roughly 1,300% increase in economic espionage probes with links to the Chinese regime. He said the Bureau opens a new, quote, counterintelligence investigation that ties back to China every 10 hours. The following is an excerpt from an essay by journalist, columnist John Stossel, known for his career at both ABC News and Fox Business Channel. Quote, just a few administrations ago, presidents were eager to celebrate China. At a 2011 roundtable in Beijing, Joe Biden said, quote, President Obama and I, we welcome, encourage, and see nothing but positive benefits flowing from direct investment in the United States from Chinese businesses and Chinese entities. A future of greater trade and growth and human dignity is possible, said George W. Bush. Bill Clinton praised China's positive change and great progress. Presidents Clinton and Bush were excited about China because its dictators had finally opened up China's economy. They got rid of price controls, broke up collective farms, allowed foreign investment, and privatized state-run businesses. China suddenly prospered. People were so happy to see China being set on this path, says Melissa Chen, who reports on China for the website Spectator USA. The reforms lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty for the very first time. Then, 3 years ago, China Communist Party leader Xi Jinping got himself named president for life. He immediately cracked down on speech, even jokes. After someone noted his resemblance to Winnie the Pooh, all mentions of that character were deleted from Chinese internet. They have built an almost perfectly walled-in internet, says Melissa Chen. China does this by employing 1 million censors. They block Google, Facebook, Twitter, and most Western media. A few computer-savvy Chinese citizens use forbidden apps to get around the censorship, but most don't get to see the same internet that we see. People caught accessing banned sites are punished. Police may barge into your home, threaten your family, or just restrict your choices. You can't make a doctor's appointment, explains Chen. You can't travel. They'll block you from buying a train ticket or a plane ticket. In short, today's China is once again a vicious communist dictatorship, end quote. China's economy has grown from $300 billion in 1980 to $14 trillion last year. Joe Biden has been in Washington, D.C. that entire time. There's documented evidence that fake news won't discuss, revealing how Biden leveraged his relations with the CCP for direct financial benefit of himself and his son. Chinese state media has openly voiced support for a Biden presidency, saying he would, quote, smooth the regime, he would be smoother for the regime to deal with, which is saying that it's smoother to rob a bank when you can cut a deal with the bank president. President Trump warned us at the North Carolina rally on Tuesday when he said China would own our country if Joe Biden got elected. Forbid it, Almighty God. Vic, let's roll.
Thanks. Stay with us, folks. In just a moment, we're going to be talking to Carter Page. Stay with us on Trump Talk Now.
Make some noise!
Time to drain the swamp. Let's take a time out on Trump Talk Now. At Embroidery Plus, it's all about the plus. Embroidery Plus can customize your athletic wear, golf apparel, caps, hats. Plus, Embroidery Plus is badges,
buttons, magnets, backpacks, bags, and totes, clocks, watches, plus.
2033 South Ridgewood in South Daytona. They're waiting for your call at 386-255-5880. Embroidery Plus. Let's return now to the Trump Truth. From Volusia Top Gun, it's Trump Talk Now with your host, Vic Baker.
Welcome back, Republicans. I've been saying for a long time karma is coming. Chickens are coming home to roost for the corrupt officials, mainstream media, and Democrat operatives who ruined the life of innocent American Carter Page in an attempt to subvert our democracy, and many others as well, General Flynn being one of them. We're waiting for indictments still. The election's coming up, so I suspect nothing until after that. But in the meantime, Carter Page, the man at the center of one of the worst scandals in our country's history, reveals in a new book, Abuse in Power, how the nation's top law enforcement officials did abuse their power and framed an innocent American in their effort to take down Donald Trump. And so we're privileged to have with us tonight the man who can tell the story himself, Carter Page.
Great to be with you, Vic. Thanks for having me.
Carter, after all you've been through, I mean, I don't know where to begin, but you seem to have been the focus of their interest early on in 2016, and from the lies generated out of your relationship with the FBI, which you actually were helping the FBI. Kleinsmith's now indicted, but we don't have any more indictments yet. But they created a tissue of lies, right, and used you as the central figure in this. Your life's been turned upside down. Will you ever see justice yourself? In terms, there was a labor secretary, Ray Donovan, under Ronald Reagan. After he went through a circumstance like you, he came back after he came out and he was exonerated. He said, "Where do I go to get my reputation back?" Well, Carter, your reputation, I think, has been marred by these people, but in fact, they've really done it to themselves. Tell us what you think is going to happen now.
Well, Vic, thanks a lot. It's some great points you're making, but I think it's not what they did to me. I always bear in mind, it's not where do you get your reputation back. To me, the bigger question is, where do we get our country back? This was really, as the subtitle of my book, my new book refers to, was an attempted coup against a duly elected president. And this started during the campaign, President Trump's first ever election campaign in his entire life just 4 years ago. And so the question then becomes, where do we go to get our democracy back? Where do we go to get our justice system back? And where do we go to get intelligence officials who colluded with the DNC and the Democrat Party to interfere in a presidential election? So to me, that's really the biggest question and where I am focusing my efforts. And that's what I hope to get at and inform the readers of in my new book, Abuse and Power.
Well, let me throw out some names to you, and I'll just let you do some free-form thinking. What comes to mind when you hear these names? Brennan. Let's start with him. Former CIA Director Jim Brennan. What do you think about him? And what comes to mind?
He's a perfect example, and this is part of the genesis of this entire fake scandal that was perpetrated by the Democrats in conjunction with the Obama-Biden administration. In August of 2016, a then senator named Harry Reid sends a letter to James Comey with all kinds of crazy accusations, right? And where did those originate from? Well, they originated from two sources. One are the corrupt operatives of the DNC. The other is he specifically cites in his letter in August 2016, just 4 years ago, a meeting that he had with then CIA Director Brennan. So unfortunately, and this goes back to the core question we were just discussing: where do we go to get our country back? I think a core problem and a challenge that so many great Americans have been fighting to get to the bottom of for the last several years is what exactly happened. And just to name a few people, Chairman Lindsey Graham of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chairman Chuck Grassley, Chairman Johnson, all of these senior congressional leaders in the Republican Party have been trying to dig into that and asking a lot of these same questions. And unfortunately, we haven't gotten the full truth yet, and that's part of what I try to do in my book, of providing some important context and some real facts. Because again, the Harry Reid letter related to his meeting with Brennan, which has not really been fully exposed yet. There there's a lot of lies that were thrown around and a tremendous amount of damage that has been done to our country as a result.
Well, Carter, James Brennan, as we understand it, running the CIA, had a task force at the CIA that was investigating candidate Trump. Well, of course, the CIA has no business doing that sort of thing, but that's the genesis, it seems, of this. It would appear to a lot of us that he was the mastermind, but that Comey was certainly right in there behind him. So the next name I throw at you is James Comey, that self-important, holier-than-thou tower of hypocrisy, who ran the FBI into ruin. Talk about ruined reputations. He's destroyed the FBI's reputation. And we don't see much better with Christopher Wray in terms of picking up the pieces right now. So what about Comey? Is he going to see justice? Is Brennan going to see justice?
Another couple of great questions as well, Vic, and I should have added that to my where do we go to get back, right? Where do we go to get our FBI back?
Right.
And I think you're absolutely right that so much tremendous damage has been done to that essential institution for national security and justice in America. And unfortunately, and as I explain in my book, I actually was in touch with then FBI Director James Comey in September of 2016. I had worked and provided a lot of support to the FBI going back many years, and I touched base with them when all these lies are coming out, when there are these false media reports planted by the Democrats and their operatives to smear then candidate Trump by trying to completely destroy me with a number of false allegations. And I did everything to try to set the record straight to block this election interference campaign by the Democrat Party and operatives in the media, as well as foreign agents. And unfortunately, exactly to your point, no justice has been achieved as of yet. There's no full accounting, and we haven't really gotten the complete story. And I think similar to the example you just alluded to, there are so many things which continue to get disclosed, and so much more needs to still be revealed.
Stefan Halper tried to set you up, and I guess you were kind of cut off from a lot of your former contacts in the international community, and you kind of got steered to Stefan Halper and tried to seeming to feed you some misinformation and try to pick your brains to see if it could get you into some incriminating situation. And he was working against you for the FBI, was he not?
Well, again, I mean, he's another perfect example. There's so much that's unknown in this story, and I explain so many of these details in this spy thriller, which I wrote in my book. And it's all, it's that old saying, sometimes facts are stranger and more extraordinary than fiction, and I think this is a perfect example. I was in a situation right after that, and right before that letter I sent to Comey, 4 years ago this month, in just a few weeks before the last presidential election cycle. And unfortunately, my life was completely turned upside down. And he was a Cambridge University in the UK, a professor there.
Yes.
So someone that should be seemingly, an individual with goodwill and acting with some basic level of integrity. And unfortunately, when my life was turned upside down, I'm getting constant death threats. He presented himself as someone who could be a trusted ear. And little did I know, all of these scandalous things were happening behind the scenes. And unfortunately, right along the lines of what we were just talking about, Vic, I've been trying to get to the bottom of that, and I explain a lot of these details in my book, but this really is just the tip of the iceberg, and hopefully there's much more to come.
Yes, and speaking of much more to come, if you wouldn't mind staying with us for just a few more minutes after this brief break, I want to talk to you about the Durham investigation. Where do you see this going? if you wouldn't mind.
Certainly.
Thank you. This segment's been brought to you locally by the Double Barrel Bar and Grill, and we'll be back with Carter Page in just a moment. Thank you.
Time to check on the progress of the wall. Let's take a time out on Trump Talk Now. It's racing's original North Turn. If you're looking for a good drink, great entertainment, and the best in food, they're right on the beach at Racing's original North Turn. Rhonda and Walt invite you to come on down to dinner tonight. Here are a couple of testimonials. These are actual testimonials from people who have enjoyed the North Turn. Been there many times, always great food and drinks, great location on the beach. And another, what a great experience. It's my new favorite restaurant in the Daytona Beach area. Racing's original North Turn on South Atlantic Avenue. That's A1A in Ponce Inlet, about 3.2 miles south of the Dunlawton Bridge and A1A intersection. It's Racing's original North Turn, a restaurant, museum, bar, gift shop, live music. That's Racing's North Turn. Racing's North Turn has been voted by you top 10 beach bar 7 years in a row. Next year, they're going for top 5. Let's return now to the Trump Truth. From Volusia Top Gun, it's Trump Talk Now with your host, Vic Baker.
Welcome back, Patriot Trumppublicans. This segment brought to you locally by Sheds of Daytona. We're with Carter Page, who has quite a spy thriller he's written, but it's not a fiction book. It's not a novel, folks. It's a real deal. And not only, Carter, did they have Stephen Halper snooping around, they also, the FBI started rifling through all your emails with the Trump campaign, trying to find some dirt on Trump through you. And this went on, and a nightmare around the time of the election. Here you were, an Eagle Scout, you went to the U.S. Naval Academy, you're a man of integrity, you always led your life as a patriot, and they're treating you like you're some kind of cloak and dagger spy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Vic. And unfortunately, I mean, this is another perfect example of where these bad actors and these illicit operators were working behind the scene to do so much damage, not just to myself. You know, I was just a pipsqueak. They were looking to do much more serious damage to the President of the United States, who is someone I've supported. So there was an infamous moment, infamous in terms of the false reaction from a number of people. But on March 4th, 2017, in the early months of the Trump administration, President Trump tweeted on a Saturday morning that Obama was wiretapping Trump Tower. And that is a wiretapping, and you know, it actually went far beyond that.
That was March 4th of 2017.
It was hacking.
That was March 4th of 2017, I believe you put that tweet out.
Right.
And they railed against Trump to say, oh, that's ridiculous. But, you know, honestly, that's exactly what they were doing, Carter. And wiretapping you, wiretapping Trump Tower, sneaking into the corporate offices to try to find out any dirt they could on this guy. There's never been a time in American history when the powers of the Justice Department and the FBI were used in such a fashion. I mean, Watergate is different, I think, by quite a bit. This is beyond the pale. Now we've got this Durham investigation that's been going on for quite a while. And, you know, we see Bill Barr standing there like the Rock of Gibraltar, but yet we were expecting something by Labor Day. Labor Day has come and gone. We're 8 weeks away from the election. Do you expect any indictments to come down the road here, Carter? And if so, what do you expect to see happen? And when do you think it's going to happen?
Well, I think, Vic, the most essential thing is to just have the truth out there, because the election interference campaign by the Democrats and deep state operatives in the last presidential election did so much damage. There has now been, just a couple weeks ago, there was the first indictment and the first charging document and a guilty plea of one of the perpetrators involved in committing crimes against myself and so many other Trump supporters. You know, I was the core specific target, but obviously with intentions to do so much more damage to other people I was associated with,
Correct.
including the Trump campaign. But if you read closely that document, on the second page of the charging document against this FBI lawyer named Mr. Kleinsmith,
right? Yeah.
if you look at that, it there are mentions of other people involved, and going back to August 2016 in terms of this information, which was being put out there in just a couple of months before the election. And unfortunately, there's a lot more that needs to be known, but what we do know for sure, and as discussed on page 2 on paragraph 5 of that document, there were obviously other people involved. So all I can say is stay tuned, and I've certainly got wind that there will, at the very least, be additional information which will be disclosed, which I think is absolutely essential and an important next step in this long process of restoring our justice system and restoring our national security infrastructure in this country. But what we shall see, it's a little bit of a race against the clock, because I think the American voters really need the full truth in order to understand the criminal activities that were committed during the Obama-Biden administration during the last presidential election cycle.
John Brennan put out through a spokesperson that he was told he's not a target, but so was Donald Trump told that when they were asking questions. And the fact is, people who know law enforcement, federal law enforcement, know you can be a non-target 1 second, and the next second you can be a target depending on what they turn over. So anything can happen in this, right? And we've got people like John Brennan, we've got James Comey, James Clapper, we've got people like Sally Yates. Rod Rosenstein seems to me to be exposed, because he went along with this FISA abuse as well. They all signed off on these FISA warrants. Andrew McCabe. And then you've got Strzok and Page. Strzok's got a book out this week, perpetrating more of his lies and slanders and smears. And it goes on and on and on, Carter. And it's got to make your stomach turn when you see this thing churning and churning and churning, and you don't see the truth coming out. You're basically letting us know that you yourself are not in a position to know where this is going to come out, and that's probably a good thing. If Durham's doing his job properly, nobody should know what's going on outside that grand jury until it happens. So does that give you some kind of confidence that maybe they're doing their job and we'll find out in due time?
Yeah, and this is another example. I should have mentioned that when we were talking about Mr. Kleinsmith, the FBI lawyer who's now pleaded guilty to this felony. And exactly along the same lines, he was in touch with my lawyers, right? And my lawyer told me that in his conversations with Mr. Kleinsmith, similar to what happened with Brennan, he alleged that I was a non-target as well, and little did we know that same month, right as they were talking, within a week of their conversation, they submit the next fraudulent FISA warrant to spy on myself as a way of infiltrating the Trump movement. So I think there's certainly a lot more to that. And look, I think there is the nice thing and a important turning point that we've just had over the course of the last month or so. There is a law in the United States called the Crime Victims' Rights Act, right? And the nice thing that's happening now is that for the first time, there have been, as you're correctly alluding to, there are so many crimes that have been committed as part of what these bad actors, including some of the ones you alluded to, have done. But for the first time, the U.S. Department of Justice, over the course of the last month, has actually been operating in accordance with the Crime Victims' Rights Act, which gives certain rights to people who have had their rights previously abused. And for example, the Crime Victims' Rights Act talks about the right to be treated with fairness and with respect for the victim's dignity and privacy. And let me tell you, during the Rosenstein Sessions years at the DOJ, that was precisely the opposite of the way I was treated. No fairness, no respect, zero dignity, and obviously, as per the authorization that Mr. Rosenstein and his cabal signed off on, a complete destruction of any sense of privacy with this extraordinarily powerful spying mechanism at the highest levels of the U.S. intelligence community.
Well, Carter, we can only hope and pray that my gut is telling me the right thing, and that's it, that we're not going to, this election's not even going to be close, that President Donald Trump, the American people, are onto this. They understand what's going on, and they know what's at stake, and it's not a battle even anymore between Republican and Democrat. It's between the deep state and the anarchists as well, and America. And you are, sir, a patriot who stood firm through all this, and we congratulate you for standing for what's right and what's true. And we thank you very much for sharing your insights with us tonight on Trump Talk Now.
Well, I really appreciate it, Vic, and it's really essential that we all demand the truth. And I know how much you're doing to expose the full story in a way that will help Americans be in a much better position. But I think we really need to fight hard in this historic, pivotally important upcoming election in less than 2 months here.
And thank you for your service to our country, sir, and thank you for being our guest. Thank you, Carter Page. We'll be back in just a moment.
Scanning the networks for fake news. Let's take a time out on Trump Talk Now. ShedsOfDaytona.com has it all. All shapes, all sizes. Wood buildings by Weather King. Cabins, garages, she sheds, man caves. Metal buildings by Carolina. Carports, RV covers, barns, and Overholt greenhouses. Gazebos, screen rooms, dog kennels, chicken coops. They have it all. Come see ShedsOfDaytona.com. Located at the Daytona Flea and Farmers Market, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Want more Trump Talk Now? You can go to Blog Talk Radio, search Trump Talk Now, and select your favorite audio past edition. That's Blog Talk Radio, search Trump Talk Now, and select. Now you have more choices. You can go to our Facebook page, Trump Talk Now, scroll down to select your favorite show from our archives, or go to Blog Talk Radio for an audio version. And remember, Patriots, please like us and share us. Help us spread the word. You can watch our broadcast live from anywhere in the world on our Facebook page, Trump Talk Now. Let's return now to the Trump Truth. From Volusia Top Gun, it's Trump Talk Now with your host, Vic Baker.
Welcome back, Patriot Trumpublicans. This segment brought to you locally by Racing's North Turn. We were just, it's riveting when you hear from somebody who was right in the middle of it.
He had a target on him, and wow, to come through the other side and still be together, and I hope this book makes him a lot of money, because he probably ran up some really big lawyer bills.
He's going to have to pay some lawyers with that money. Now,
Yes.
Some headlines out tonight. You're not surprised to hear this, I'm sure. The Republicans in the Senate pushed what they called a skinny coronavirus relief bill. $1 billion, actually $200 billion of it had already been previously allocated. They added $100 billion to it. They said that's what we can do to get a little jump start, a little money for schools to get them reopened, to get people back on their feet, some individual payments to individual Americans. Well, Chuck Schumer, of course, got the Democrats to block that. In the Senate, you can block it unless there's 60 votes in favor, because they could not invoke cloture on filibuster, therefore it couldn't happen. That's something, by the way, the Democrats, if they take control, get rid of, since they're in the majority, then they will prevent the filibuster from stopping them. Another reason to keep them out of control. Now, so that's because Nancy wanted $3.5 trillion that we don't have to pay for things we don't need. Okay, so now the best jobs program out there is opening up your businesses. J.P. Morgan just announced to its people, it's time to go back to work September 21st in Manhattan. We want the traders back on the job at their desks. Now, they may not do what they used to. They may have discovered that 50% of the workforce never will have to go to the office again. But the traders need to be on the job in the offices in New York. New York's going to find that a lot of these companies are going to scale back their operations. But once J.P. Morgan sends the signal it's trying to go back to work, folks, it's time to go back to work. And as for the schools, we've been 3 weeks in for some school districts into the schools being open. Minimal casualties, minimal COVID problems. We all know what's really going on with COVID. We know that this COVID pandemic is, for all intents and purposes, over. The death rate is down to next to nothing now. And in fact, remember, 94% of all the deaths attributed to COVID in this country, that's 190-some thousand deaths, were COVID plus something else. COVID plus diabetes, COVID plus heart, COVID plus lung. So guess what? COVID-only deaths were only 6% of those deaths. So you know what's going to happen on November 4th. The Democrat mayors will no longer have a reason to keep cities closed. New York City, they're letting the restaurants open 25% capacity. But de Blasio wants to put so many restrictions on that, these restaurants will never be able to survive. A lot of these restaurants will never open again. This is nonsense. The way to bring back the American economy is let Americans go back to work.
They don't want that. This is a misery strategy. They want across the board misery for the American people. They won't pass corona relief money. They won't open the schools if they can help it. They won't open anything. There was a gym in San Francisco where the government gym was open, the private gym was not. This is a misery across the board. The riots are ongoing. I don't know why they think misery works for them. I guess it's, well, you always blame the incumbent people, which is the president, for your miserable life. But that's not what's working out. The miserable life that we're being imposed on us, we blame the Democrats.
Pre-dawn today in Michigan, I think it was Grand Rapids, if I'm not mistaken. Trump rally tonight, okay, in Michigan. The people showed up this morning for the Trump rally. It's going to be another huge rally. You're going to see one of these every day or every other day. Donald Trump is out there campaigning. There's your real poll, folks. I don't care what the pollsters tell you. That's your real poll. Another item on the Biden looks like a deer in the headlights when confronted about his support for the job-killing NAFTA treaty, gives nonsensical answer, and then blames Bush.
Blames Bush.
He doesn't know what planet he's on.
Well, we just had one of our guests come up and say that he went to a Ford plant and praised the Corvette
as the greatest car ever made.
Yeah, it's his greatest car ever made. Now, folks,
that doesn't go over well at a Ford plant. I think the Ford people are pretty proud of what they put out.
He's lost it. He's completely lost it.
Yeah. Now, here's a very disturbing thing from the Woodward book. Another excerpt is out today, saying that General Mattis was plotting with somebody in the intelligence community. Actually, Dan Coates, the director of national intelligence, they were actually plotting to find a way to overthrow Trump.
This is spectacular, headline-grabbing stuff from Bob Woodward, who's already participated in a coup against the president, President Nixon, and it was successful. The president was removed. That we don't need to relive that one, but I'm just telling you, Bob Woodward is 77 years old, and it feels like he wants one more notch on his belt. He's going to smear this president right to the bitter end.
Next month, one of our guests, next month on October 15th, will be John O'Connor. He was Deep Throat's attorney. John O'Connor, a former federal prosecutor himself, who knows all the ins and outs, and he's written a book called Postgate, exposing the actual dirty tactics that the Washington Post and Woodward and Bernstein pulled to take down Nixon. And
that was the first deep state coup. Deep Throat was a deep state operative who was feeding information to Washington Post, who in collaboration made this narrative. It happened before. They're using a lot of the same templates now.
And this column today on PJ Media from columnist Rick Moran is entitled Why the Woodward Atlantic 1-2 Punch Thrown by Democrats Missed the Target. Let's give you a little excerpt of that. Okay. The Woodward Atlantic 1-2 punch designed to destroy the campaign of Donald Trump has failed. Trump may still lose. I don't think he will. But it won't be because of the hit pieces in major liberal publications portraying him as anti-military or uncaring about the coronavirus. Democrats are still acting like it's 1970 and everybody believes the media. That was the height of trust in TV news when Walter Cronkite was the most trusted man in America, and Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein became actual heroes because of their Watergate reporting. The two Washington Post investigative journalists inspired several generations of college kids to follow their path. In their eagerness to make a name for themselves, many of this new breed of muckrakers failed to follow simple procedures designed to weed out biased or politically motivated information, hence a catastrophic loss of trust and believability in the news. Furthermore, something happened rather in recent years that you may not have noticed. Newspapers never, ever would allow an ad to appear on their front pages. That's changed. Once they started selling their front page, the content of the front page was for sale. Because if an ad buyer could influence what gets headlines at the top of the front page, then the separation of church and state, as we call it at a newspaper, and I've worked at newspapers, is gone. And once you don't separate the sales department from the editorial department, your newspaper is nothing more than a whore on paper. That's what it is. And I'm telling you, that's what's happened to many of the newspapers across this country. This newspaper here in town in Daytona is owned by Gannett. They own hundreds of newspapers. They're near bankruptcy. They're laying people off. They can't get people to subscribe. Why is that? Because we're not buying the crap they're selling. We'll be back in a moment.
Living the American dream. Let's take a time out on Trump Talk Now. There's more Trump Talk Now, Patriots. You can catch us live on our Facebook page, Trump Talk Now. You can watch a previous show on our same Facebook page, Trump Talk Now. You can also stream our audio version on Blog Talk Radio. Search for Trump Talk Now. And coming soon will be our past shows streaming on our YouTube channel, Trump Talk Now. We wish to thank our host, Volusia Top Gun, and the Double Barrel Restaurant. If you need anything related to guns, Volusia Top Gun is a must-stop. From retail to lessons and instruction to gun range, it's all here. Let's return now to the Trump Truth. From Volusia Top Gun, it's Trump Talk Now with your host, Vic Baker.
Welcome back, Trumpublicans. We're happy to have you here with us. This segment brought to you locally by Embroidery Plus. Joe, you have the floor.
Well, a lot of you know what a Pollyanna I am. I'm always looking for the good things, right? I'm glad that some things are happening. School is a big issue right now. And of course, I'm not a big fan of public schools. I think government schools have been corrupted, and we're seeing some of that in the streets right now. But here's some good news. The Texas Home School Coalition, which processes requests for families pulling their children out of public school, reported a 400% increase in withdrawals from government schools leading this year in August. This follows July, where they saw a 1,500% jump from the previous year. The spike, the group reported, stems directly from the Texas Education Agency's pandemic schooling guidelines, sparking a mass exodus from a public school system as parents opt to teach their children at home. According to Gallup, 1 in 10 Americans are now homeschooling. This is how you fix our horrible public school system. You basically take your children away.
Now, in New York State today, police arrested a young man who was told he had to do distance learning and not go into school. He wanted in-person schooling, so he walked to the school in defiance of the school's order for him to stay home, and he got arrested for going to school. Now, is this bizarro land or not? He got arrested for going to school. Hairdressers are getting arrested for doing their business. You know, Nancy Pelosi thinks that she's exempt from all the rules that apply to everyone else. And she tries to put this poor hairdresser out of business who exposed her hypocrisy. But the GoFundMe account for this
$300,000?
Erica Cash, is it? It's $300,000 and counting, and she'll be able to set up her business in South Dakota, where Governor Naomi Noam has invited her to come and do business.
This is the great danger, I think, of the Durham investigation not producing. I'm on the blogs, as you all know, all the time, and people are really mad about this. They thought it would be by Labor Day. That was the fallback position. We thought it would be the summer. And it's just embarrassingly slow, and people are angry. And if we get this perception, just like you get arrested for going to school, you get arrested for being a hairdresser, if we get a two-tier system of justice verified, because all these criminals, traitors, walk free from what they did to overthrow a duly elected president, then we have a real problem with trust in the system that may never recover.
Here's the problem. You get real liberal judges making law that shouldn't be making law. You've got legislators going over the top with ridiculous bills like the Green New Deal and all that crap. And if you get Joe Biden in the White House, Katie bar the door, it's over with for this country. But then you add the media to the mix, the fourth estate, if you will, and they're even worse. Now, here's something for you. The vast majority of Americans think there is political bias in news coverage.
Really?
This should come as no surprise to you.
Who thinks there's not?
86% of Americans say the media is biased. 49% very seriously biased. The breakdown now is 72% of those Republicans, 50+% of independents, and 20-some% of Democrats believe that police are more concerned with other people's news sources than they are with their own. When given a choice, 69% of Americans were concerned about bias in the news that other people were viewing, while 29% concerned about the bias in their own news sources. 56% of respondents believe that there is political bias in the news source that they relied on the most, the poll.
Who are these people that don't believe there's bias? That's unbelievable that they would think that.
I don't know. And China, okay. Now, as if you even care about the Academy Awards anymore. I haven't watched one in years now. I mean,
who goes to movies anymore?
We don't go to the movies anymore. They're not. Once again, we're not buying the crap they're selling. And the Academy Awards now has established an LGBTQ racial quota for the Best Picture contenders. They have to show diversity in their cast, in their storylines, and they've got to have a certain storyline if they want to win an Oscar. That will render the Oscars meaningless.
Well,
there are a number of pictures I could list for you that would not, like Godfather, that would never meet those standards. I can tell you right there. Now,
we hope and we believe that the movie business as we grew up with is gone. I don't think it'll ever come back.
Well, streaming services have rendered the movie theaters less important. If you've got an 80-inch screen in your living room,
which you can get for a few $100s,
and you can watch a movie for
you can live stream.
$8.
Yeah, who's going to truck down to a movie theater and pay $8 for popcorn and watch a movie?
And stick to the seats from all the popcorn everybody left there before.
I think it's a dead. It's like the horse and buggy. It's like the drive-in movies. Drive-in movies are dead.
When's the last time you saw a Blockbuster store? You know?
Well, those are dead.
Yeah,
things change, and that's another silver lining, folks. Hollywood is going to suffer and maybe change. Of course, Hollywood's owned by China.
Let's mention something else that's going to suffer. Tonight is kickoff season for the NFL. Does anybody care? Does anybody care?
No.
Are you going to watch? No. They're putting the Black Lives Matter and social justice slogans in the end zones instead of the team names. They're letting them wear stuff on their helmets, honoring various people, whether they're criminals or not.
You know, when Peyton Manning was with the Colts, he wanted to, when Johnny Unitas died, he wanted to wear black high-top shoes to honor him. He asked permission. They said no. It's against their uniform guidelines. Now you can put everything you want because it's all social justice now.
Now the NBA, most of which is centered now in
China-owned,
in Disney, in Florida. China pretty much owns the NBA for all intents and purposes. Now those social justice warriors, well, they might deign to give us some playoff games and play some more games. Nobody's going to show up. Now, what about the team owner that just spent $5 billion for a new football stadium and he can't fill it because, first of all, with Corona guidelines, they won't let him fill them. But secondly, people aren't going to show up anyway. So they're going to have trouble selling tickets for the NFL. The NFL now stands for, you hear me now? Not for long.
We hope not. Really.
I'm telling you, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. I try to watch the games if I can. Down here, they're hard to see. But you know something? I don't care anymore.
No.
If they're going to kneel before the national anthem and throw up a fist at us and basically stick their thumb in our eye. We don't need to watch
No.
it. We don't need to pay a bunch of pampered prima donna athletic millionaires to stick their ideology in our faces. Stop it.
Yeah.
Not to mention all this racial theory that they've been trying to put in the government that Donald Trump has put a stop
Critical race theory.
to. Critical race theory.
And this was being taught in federal agencies as part of a curriculum. It was really a re-education camp is what it was. The president stopped
This is
it.
Orwellian
The
stuff.
president stopped it.
Backing the blue, folks, 80% of voters believe police deserve support and respect. Do you agree? Do you agree? Of course. So we have the Democrats, and unemployment numbers held steady this week at 884,000. It's a big number, folks, but it's still well under 1 million, and it's better than we were. We've regained 10 million of the 20 million jobs lost, or the 40, yeah, that's right, 20 million.
The president says this at every rally. Wait till next year. It's going to be the biggest economic boom we've ever seen.
We want to thank our crew, Shane Stanton of The Volt, our Director of Technology, Stacy Brinkerhoff, our Energizer Bunny, our Assistant Producer, Kathy Applegarth, Cash, our Senior Business Development Director, Robert Morrow, Mr. Clean, our Assistant Producer, and of course, Michael Motane, the Mad Dog, our Founder and Executive Producer. Next week on Trump Talk Now, join us for Judge Janine and Eric McTaxis next week on Trump Talk Now.
Thanks for joining us as we make America great again, 1 hour at a time. Trump Talk Now originates from the Double Barrel Bar and Grill at Volusia Top Gun in Daytona Beach, Florida. Join us next week as we live the American dream on Trump Talk Now.